You're at church, kneeling, praying, surrounded by the beautiful art of the Renaissance. Suddenly a flash of steel, a desperate cry, and a fountain of blood erupts onto the cathedral floor. You just witnessed a brutal murder during High Mass. Welcome to the world of the Medici. The name Medici probably brings to mind art, beauty, and lavish palaces. They were the patrons of Michelangelo, Leonardo da Vinci, and Botticelli. They financed the very period we call the Renaissance. But that's the propaganda they wanted you to see. Behind the priceless art and architectural marvels was a ruthless criminal dynasty that pioneered a new kind of power, one built on debt, murder, political manipulation, and psychological warfare. They weren't just a powerful family, they were the original organized crime syndicate. They made the mafia look like amateurs, and they did it all while wearing the robes of piety. How did they pull off the greatest con in history? Let's start at the beginning. The story begins with a man named Giovanni di Medici in 1397. He had a problem. The Catholic Church had declared charging interest on loans a mortal sin, but Giovanni was a banker, and banks don't make money without interest. So he found a loophole. He created something called the dry exchange. Instead of lending money and charging interest, he would buy foreign currency for delivery at a future date. The profit came from manipulating the foreign exchange rate, not from a direct interest charge. It was a genius move. The church looked the other way, and the Medici became known as God's bankers while accumulating massive wealth. You see, it's not a sin if you just call it something else. Giovanni wasn't interested in political office himself. He preferred to pull the strings from the shadows, using his immense wealth to gain popular support. He championed proportional taxation, which taxed the rich more. This made him a hero to the common people, while his family quietly built a financial empire with branches across Europe. Giovanni's son, Cosimo the Elder, took this silent power to a whole new level. When his political enemies tried to get rid of him by exiling him, it was their fatal mistake. Cosimo's chilling response to the government was a reminder of their dependence. Ask your soldiers how many times they were paid with my own funds. He returned a year later with even more wealth and influence, becoming the unofficial head of the Florentine Republic. He perfected a systematic machine of manipulation. He controlled the government's loan system, making the Republic utterly dependent on Medici money for basic operations like paying soldiers. He also controlled approximately 50% of all public debt held by private citizens. This made being a Medici ally a requirement for political and financial survival. Before Medici rule, holding office was a civic duty. After they took over, it became a direct path to personal wealth. The Medici were no longer just a banking dynasty. They had bought the city of Florence. By the time Lorenzo the Magnificent took over in 1469, the Medici were more than a family. They were a brand. Lorenzo's strategy was simple: use art as a weapon. He sponsored the greatest artists of the era, Michelangelo, Donatello, Leonardo da Vinci, but not out of the goodness of his heart. He transformed art patronage into a sophisticated propaganda machine. Every major piece of art was designed to reinforce Medici legitimacy. Botticelli's works, for example, are filled with hidden Medici symbols and political messages. They created an image of a benevolent, cultural leader while they operated a ruthless political machine. The Medici essentially invented the idea of using culture to whitewash political crimes. But not everyone was charmed. The Pazzi family, a rival banking dynasty, saw right through the beautiful facade. They decided to end the Medici reign once and for all, with a plan so shocking it sounds like a Hollywood script. The plot was set for April 26, 1478, during High Mass at Florence Cathedral. The target, Lorenzo and his brother, Giuliano. The plan was to kill both of them at the holiest moment of the service. Giuliano was not so lucky. He was stabbed 19 times and died on the cathedral floor in a pool of blood. But Lorenzo, despite a neck wound, escaped to the sacristy and survived. This one small miracle sealed the Pazzi family's horrific fate. What followed was a brutal medieval horror show. Conspirators were rounded up and hanged from the windows of the Palazzo Signoria. Their bodies were left to decompose publicly for days as a warning. The head of the Pazzi family, Jacopo, was tortured, then hanged, and his body was eventually dug up by angry mobs, dragged through the streets of Florence, and thrown into a ditch before being tossed into the Arno River. The Pazzi banking empire was completely dismantled, their palaces seized, and their family name banned from public use. With their competitors literally hanging from palace windows, the Medici's power became absolute. Even after the family's direct control over Florence waned, the corruption lived on, infecting the highest office in the world, the papacy. In 1513, Giovanni de' Medici became Pope Leo VI. Upon his election, he allegedly said, "God has given us the papacy, now let us enjoy it." And enjoy it he did. He turned the Vatican into a pleasure palace, spending the treasury on lavish banquets and hunting parties. To fund his lifestyle and the construction of St. Peter's Basilica, he massively expanded the sale of indulgences, the practice of paying money to reduce time in purgatory. This corruption was so blatant and so egregious that it directly triggered Martin Luther's Protestant Reformation in 1517. The Medici were so good at being evil, they literally split European Christianity. The family's reign of terror wasn't confined to finance and politics. Alessandro de' Medici, the first Duke of Florence, ruled through violence, rape, and intimidation. Contemporary accounts describe him as having a voracious sexual appetite. He regularly raped the wives and daughters of Florentine citizens. His sexual crimes were so notorious they became legendary. His cousin, Lorenzino, finally had enough. On January 6, 1537, Lorenzino lured Alessandro to his apartment with the promise of a night with his virgin sister. Instead, Lorenzino and a hired assassin stabbed Alessandro repeatedly in the stomach and genitals, a symbolic act of justice for his many sexual crimes. His dying screams were reportedly heard throughout the building. Even in France, the Medici legacy continued to be one of poison and plots. Catherine de' Medici, Queen of France, was suspected of using poison to eliminate political enemies. She allegedly maintained a network of Italian poisoners and assassins, including her personal perfumer, who was rumored to create both perfumes and poisons. The historical rumor mill claims she used poison-laced gloves and cosmetics to kill her enemies. Her most infamous act? Orchestrating the St. Bartholomew's Day massacre in 1572, which led to the slaughter of thousands of French Protestants. It's a terrifying legacy that has earned her the nickname, the Poison Queen of France. The Medici left a complicated legacy. We can't deny their contributions to art, science, and the birth of modern banking, but it is crucial to remember that this Renaissance facade was built on a foundation of ruthless ambition, corruption, and brutality. They controlled Florence through debt and fear, pioneered organized crime, and their corruption led to the permanent schism of European Christianity. Their history is a stark reminder that behind every great fortune there is a great crime. And that sometimes the most beautiful things in history are just the cleverest pieces of propaganda. Turns out, all that glitters isn't gold. It's just a distraction from the blood on their hands.